Good morning and welcome to CRC's webinar on effective climate communication. This webinar is organized by the Capital Region Climate Readiness Collaborative, or CRC, in partnership with ecoAmerica. My name is Grace Kaufman. I'm a project manager at the Local Government Commission, serving as staff for CRC, and I will be your moderator for this webinar. A quick overview of today's agenda. I will first provide a brief intro to CRC for those of you who may not be familiar with us. Then ecoAmerica's Executive Director, Meghan Spicer, will provide an overview of ecoAmerica and their programs. After, Jennifer Watson-Roberts will provide an overview of ecoAmerica's tools for effective climate communication. Before we get started, I have a few logistical items to go over. Everyone will be muted except for our panelists. And due to the large number of participants, we ask that you please type your question into the question box. Feel free to submit your questions at any point during the webinar, and I will summarize those questions during the Q&A portion, which will follow Jennifer's presentation. If we don't get to all the questions, we will ask our presenters to respond after the webinar, and we will share their responses in a follow-up email. This webinar will be recorded and made available on our website along with the PowerPoint presentation. As I mentioned, this webinar is being organized by the Capital Region Climate Readiness Collaborative. CRC is a collaborative of local leaders seeking to build climate resilience throughout California's capital region. We bring together stakeholders from across sectors and jurisdictions to find regional solutions to address our shared challenges: drought, extreme heat, extreme weather events, wildfires, and more. Our goal is to help the 6 counties of El Dorado, Placer, Sacramento, Sutter, Yolo, and Yuba, and the communities they encompass thrive in the face of a changing climate. The Local Government Commission serves as the program administrator for CRC. If you have any questions or if you're interested in joining CRC, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Now on to our featured presentations. Meghan Spicer is ecoAmerica's Executive Director and has helped the organization achieve its mission since 2008. Before joining ecoAmerica, Meghan was the brand director for RED. She was integral to the conception, launch, and continued growth of the RED brand and led collaboration with partners Gap, Hallmark, Windows, and more on all consumer-facing expressions of their product, RED partnership. Meghan also worked at Mattel Inc., where she held roles in brand and marketing for their consumer products division with over 1,000 worldwide licenses of the Barbie and other Mattel brands. Her early career was in financial services, working in strategic and online marketing for American Express and VP marketing for Robertson Stephens Investment Bank. Meghan lives in San Francisco with her husband and 2 children. Jennifer Watson-Roberts is the director of ecoAmerica's Path to Positive Communities program. ecoAmerica builds institutional leadership, public support, and political will for climate actions in the U.S. Roberts was the 58th mayor of Charlotte and has been a champion of issues related to education, equality, and inclusion. She's the only person to be elected to serve as both chairman of the Mecklenburg County Commission and later as mayor of Charlotte. Roberts has been a lifelong advocate for clean air and water and environmental justice. A quick reminder to all participants to please type your questions into the control panel at any point during the presentation. And Jennifer, you are up.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Grace. And I am going to share my screen. Whoop. Okay. I think I'm in the wrong mode. So anyway, thank you all for joining, and we appreciate your listening today and appreciate the partnership that we have here at ecoAmerica with the Local Government Commission and with you all through that, the Capital Readiness Regional Climate Collaborative. We're glad to be with you today. You've already heard our background, and so I'm going to turn it over to Meghan to give you a brief rundown of the agenda and give you an overview of ecoAmerica, and then I'll launch into what we do with communities in my program, which is called the Path to Positive Communities. So Meghan.
Great, thanks everyone. Thanks Jennifer, thanks for being here today. There's no more urgent issue than climate change. We've had a big week with Climate Week, a lot of media coverage on the issue. And as our young champion Greta Thunberg says, it's time to act. It's time to move beyond empty words. So I'm glad you're here today to move forward on this issue, and we hope that this webinar will help. Next slide. So as has been mentioned, ecoAmerica is our organization, and really our mission is to help institutions build their leadership on climate change. We work with local communities such as yourselves. We work in the faith community as well as in health. And our mission is to provide capacity, strategy, and resources to help large institutions be visible leaders on this issue, engage their stakeholders, ensure they're climate literate, empower climate action and advocacy, really act on this issue. And we do that through strategic support, a lot of deep research, which we're going to share a bit of today, and applied research to tools, resources, and a whole suite of guides that we will also touch on today to really help empower that leadership. Next. We also work with dozens of partners nationally. And the reason we do this is that Americans don't need to hear from another environmental group on this issue. What they need to hear from are folks like yourselves in their daily lives who they're familiar with and they trust, and who can understand this issue and translate it in a way that's personally relevant. And so we help that work. We help folks do that work through these wonderful partnerships you see on the screen. We work with almost every major national denomination of faith in America that represents over 84,000 congregations and 50 million congregants through our Blessed Tomorrow program. And for our Climate for Health program, you can see here on the screen, we also work through nearly every major national health association to help them not only lead on this issue, but engage doctors and public health officials to also lead on this issue as well. And so through those associations, we reach a diversity of professionals, over 1 million health professionals. And if you count all nurses, it's well over 5 million. What I'm going to do now is share a bit of some of the findings from our climate metrics survey. This is an annual survey that we do every year since 2015. And the whole idea is to say, what are the trends in awareness, perspectives, attitudes, behaviors of the American public? And we try to ask some unique questions that are differentiated to help us not only in our work, but hopefully help you in your work as well. So the survey results that I'm going to share right now are from our 2018 survey. I'm pleased to say we just finished fielding 2019, and we hope to have those findings very soon and ready for public consumption. Next slide. The biggest thing is taking a look, not only are people aware of climate change, but what is their concern? We see from our research and others' research that it's really that concern over the issue that motivates change, that motivates action, motivates advocacy. You can see here over the years, awareness of the changes are increasing. You'll see a bump again this year. You'll also see that concern is at very high levels. It has bumped up dramatically this year. You will see for 2019. And concern is across political parties. Often we think that in the media we present climate as a partisan issue. It is increasingly, if you peel back the label of climate change and you ask people if they're concerned, a growing number of Americans across political parties are concerned, and that just keeps rising. Interestingly, we ask if people think that others around them are concerned, and you can see here that people think only 57% of folks around them are concerned. So if you look at the total, 73% concerned, and that only 57% think that others around them are concerned, you see a big delta of concern. And therein lies one of our biggest challenges, which is that people feel alone in their concern and they don't feel socially safe to step out on this issue because they think it's a risky. And so the work that you are doing, the work that we're all doing to bring this issue into the light, talk about our concern, talk about solutions, connect with people personally is so important to get past that feeling of aloneness. Next slide. We also dive into what are people resonating with. Probably no surprise to you, people want much more wind and solar. A majority of Americans want this, not only to power their cities and communities, but their homes as well, and they want it to be more accessible to them. They also want less coal, and that sentiment is continuing to grow. So that's getting into the majority as well. Preparedness is a powerful framework for folks. 76% of Americans want their city or town to prepare for climate impacts, and a third of them say that their towns are not doing anything to prepare. So you can see there a high motivation, high ambition, and not a lot of awareness. So again, good opportunities for local cities and towns in that preparedness space. They're also starting to see the benefits that climate solutions will bring to them personally. But again, there's some room to grow here, and it's very important for us as folks who work in this space to make those connections with them on the benefits of solutions to their personal health and to the economy and for jobs. Can't stress that enough. We also take a look at support for solutions, and if you, again, part of what we do as an organization is peel back those sort of jargon terms and trying to get underneath what people really think about solutions. You can see here across the board, across political parties, very high majority support for a plethora of climate solutions, whether it's carbon tax, modernizing the grid, laws for efficiency, programs for public transit. You can see here really strong support, and that continues to hold up even until today. So really a lot of opportunity for us to move solutions forward based on public perspective. And I will say these numbers are from a nationally representative sample with a very low margin of error. So the confidence is high here. And with that, I will turn it over to Jennifer, who will talk to you about the program and walk you through our latest resources.
Thanks, Megan. And my part is going to talk about how we work with our communities, which are cities, counties, local communities, regions. We work with some states as well. And really, the Path to Positive Communities is what we call our program, and that's our outreach to local communities. We help communities build institutional leadership, public support, and political will for climate solutions. And we know that in a democracy, leaders need that public support in order to bring that change, to get the votes they need, whether it's voting on bonds for transit, cooperating in flood buyout programs, or even electing leaders in a way that they're looking at, whose position is going to focus on climate challenges and who's going to take action. We also work very hard to make sure that we are being inclusive and equitable. And as with other sectors with faith and health, we work through our national and state partners. And as you can see, Local Government Commission is one of those. National League of Cities is another partner. And we focus on medium and small cities, but we do work with some large ones. You'll see we have Path to Positive Los Angeles and have done a lot of great work with them. They've made tremendous strides in a very challenged city. And then we work with some coalition partners like the Mississippi River cities and towns and the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence cities. They are dealing with quite a bit of climate impacts as well. So one of the things that we stress in engaging the community on climate solutions is being positive and empowering. And we have actually come up with an animated video, which you are free to download and use in your own presentations with your communities, that is upbeat, but also gives people a sense that there is something that they can do about climate, and they can do it in their own communities. So I'm gonna go ahead and roll the video. It's about 1.5 minutes.
We all want our families to live in strong, healthy, safe communities with clean air and water, green spaces, thriving nature, and economic opportunities. And as a community, we're making choices to improve our health, protect property values, and create a wonderful place where we can live our best lives. We're striving to use less energy, pollute less, and reduce waste. These efforts are creating jobs, giving us choices for how we get to work, and inspiring new solutions to improve our quality of life. We're all noticing changes in our weather patterns and climate. Some communities are facing big challenges, and people are getting concerned. But we can do something about this in our community. Leadership on climate solutions is coming from all walks of life: businesses, faith leaders, educators, physicians, elected officials, and more. We can all work toward a clean, healthy, and prosperous community. So let's be part of the solution too. Make progress every day. It's easy. Use energy wisely. Recycle and protect nature. Get involved in community programs and invite your neighbors to do the same. Because a thriving community for all of us starts with us. Learn more and get involved at pathtopositive.org.
So one thing you'll notice is that we've actually customized this. Whoop. There we go. We've customized that video for our partners in Utah. So if you notice, we had their logos at the beginning and the end of that animation. It's a great way to start a community conversation, to get people focused. And again, we try to really focus on the positive actions that communities can take together. So that's just one part of our toolkit. If you'll notice, we have 8 different parts of our toolkit. That was the customizable video in number 2. And I'm going to walk through the other ones that you see listed here. So the first one is our moving forward guide. And again, this is targeted toward small and medium-sized communities. And it really goes over the basics of, as a community leader, as a city leader, a staff department head, or maybe a county commissioner or city council person, some of the basics of what you need to know about climate change and how it impacts your community, what you can do, and what the different things between mitigation, resilience, and engagement are. So I'm going to walk through this pretty quickly. You all are experts in what you know and what you do, but remember that this is targeted toward folks who might be just beginning or who are trying to really organize the action in a positive way. And so we emphasize, you know, what you need to know, that there are social and ethical issues involved with climate change. Our solutions are nonpartisan. Storms impact Republicans and Democrats. There are benefits, and if we don't look at these benefits and these actions, the risks will get worse and the impacts will get worse. And we have to also remember the vulnerable communities, because they are impacted the most. And so then we go to what you need to do. And we, again, emphasize you're starting with people, you're starting with engagement. Making a visible commitment. I'm always surprised that people, you know, are wondering, why do we need to say we're going to 100% clean energy? Well, it's a statement to your community that you care and that you have a goal and that you do plan to move toward that, and the public can hold you accountable if you don't. And so you have to also take stock of your successes. You have to have priorities, make a plan, engage everyone, and look for savings that you can recycle and keep building on those successes. Then we talk about mitigation, and a lot of people out there don't know the difference between mitigation and resilience, and really for communities, it's important just to have action. But we know that a lot of communities are looking for ways to try to reduce what's happening to the climate, and so we want to give them those steps as well. And to emphasize they can do these things both at home and at work. They should look at renewable energy. They should understand what renewable energy is, and that every community is going to be different and going to have different ways of actually approaching those solutions. The guide goes through many areas, again, buildings, transportation, zoning, waste, purchasing, trying to incent people to solutions and reuse those savings, and then of course, natural resources. And I will go through this a little bit more when we get to the resilience section, which is something I think you all focus on quite a bit. We also provide communities resources. We want to make sure that when they're looking at the technical solutions, we're really good on engaging and helping them organize their strategy and making sure they bring the public along. But our partners are best suited for the technical solutions, and we have a few of them listed here, and you'll see those in the guide as well. So then the guide talks about resilience, and we really go through, what are the biggest threats, what are the areas to think about. We really organize that into people, the people side of things, and the community. Then we look at the infrastructure and property, what happens there, and then of course the natural systems that are impacted. And we find that there are a lot of things in the natural, whether it's the animals or particular trees and natural resources that people are very attached to, have a cultural and heritage aspect to them as well. We look at planning. You want to make sure you assess your risks. You want to look at what your options, what the priorities are, what partners are out there you can use. How do you make sure that citizens and stakeholders are included, and explain it in easy to understand terms. And those will vary depending on the stakeholders who you're engaging, depending on the communities you're engaging. You want to be locally appropriate to help make sure they understand and they feel included. And I can't emphasize enough that you want to, when you're looking at planning, bring people into that conversation early, because they can tell if something's already been decided and they're just being told, as opposed to things that are in the process of being decided and prioritized and they're a part of it. That makes a big difference for them being vested in those solutions and those outcomes. So again, resilience is about people. They want to understand the way climate risks impact them. You want to be including the frontline and vulnerable communities who are often not reachable through maybe through email or through online ways. You have to actually go out into the community. And try to integrate climate considerations into every aspect of planning and building. And every department of cities and counties really should be thinking about climate impacts when they are performing their basic tasks. Nature, of course, I know that you all have a whole natural adaptation set of programs and resources, and absolutely, we actually are working in Florida. We know that they love their mangroves, but it's not just the trees. It's also the fact that they are a storm buffer and they absorb a lot of carbon and put out a lot of oxygen, and they're great for filtering water and clean air. So tree canopies are really important. Open space and parks they're a win-win-win in terms of recreation, but also health and of course, adaptation to storms and floods, and of course the natural stormwater controls. So we want to look at natural adaptation. This again is all in the guide. And there are a couple of examples I wanted to just point out. Some of the groups that we work with, the Mississippi River actually got a federal grant to put real-time water quality monitors on every barge going up the Mississippi. And so they collect that data and are able to find spills and to find challenges, much more quickly because all those barges are sending them data. We also have groups now that are doing clean air community centers because of wildfires, and with a particulate matter in the air, they're sealing up some rec centers and putting high quality air filters so that vulnerable populations know in the event of terrible smoke in the air. If your home is drafty, you can come to this recreation center and it's going to be healthier for you, and this is going to be a place of refuge. Other examples, we're seeing communities actually working on what's called managed retreat. And it's not just coastal properties, also people on rivers, on other floodplains. Whole communities are looking at how can we get together and sell and move in a managed way. And so whether they're selling, whether they're getting FEMA money or whether they're selling to the local county to put a park there. We actually did this in the Charlotte area with a floodplain and restored a whole street to a natural area where it's a park and it absorbs floodwaters. Urban cooling centers and those very hot days in our urban heat islands. And then of course, looking at your building codes and zoning, upzoning and looking at how you can really move out of the floodplain. And again, this hits every area of city and county government. The last one, of course, emergency services. And that's something that people are looking at in many different ways now based on the challenges that climate is presenting to us. I put a picture in here, which it's a special meaning to me. It's the tsunami in Japan and this one lone pine tree that survived, sort of a good symbol of resilience. This community planted 70,000 pine trees over the course of several decades to provide that storm buffer in case of tsunamis. And one tree, after the last one that was in 2011, one tree survived. And so it's really become a symbol in Japan of resilience. They actually have had to reinforce it because it was about to die, and they've made it to a built symbol now, but it's still there. Here are resilience resources. I wanted to point out that ARCA is one of them. So we actually look to you for resources for folks who are looking at resilience strategies. And local government commission is in there as well. Finally, engagement. And we can emphasize again the importance of bringing the public along. They need to see visible local leadership so they can feel comfortable engaging as well. And public participation is a rewarding process that improves the design, participation, and outcomes of local programs. At Path to Positive Communities, we believe that making climate solutions relevant and tangible at the local and state levels and getting more citizens involved really leads to good engagement as a process and an outcome, a journey and a destination. Constituencies can feel more personally connected, but they also feel more hopeful and more empowered to act. We want to work to build deep and lasting support for mayors, for council members, and for staff to engage citizens in climate solutions. And so again, we go through making that commitment, and this is all still our guide, engaging the government, working with utilities, looking at sector leaders, that's, look at the faith sector, the health sector, business sector, academic, they're all going to be part of your engagement and solution. Of course, you have to remember the media. They can be a very important tool in helping engage the community and helping increase understanding. And when we say go beyond your borders, that means that you should look, as you all do, regionally, because a lot of impacts go across local city and county jurisdiction lines, and you have to work regionally for sure. And again, here are some engagement resources. Many of these through our Climate for Health and our Blessed Tomorrow, which is our faith outreach. So that was all the Moving Forward guide. That is a guide for local communities and how we work with those communities. Now I'm going to go through a few other parts of the toolkit, and then we'll end up with if you have any questions. So the next item on the toolkit is what we call our climate actions checklist. And this is really, it's a 7-page document. It is not exhaustive. It is something to get communities to start thinking about what are other things that we can do. I hear this from people all the time. I don't control our utility. I have no idea what else I can do to help improve things, whether it's mitigation or resilience. And they this is one way to look through all the different areas that cities and counties and communities work with, and just ideas of things other communities have done. We will be building this out with examples as well. Right now it doesn't have those links, but we are going to be working with probably with folks like you all to, when you have a great example of a community that's done, you know, a great tree ordinance, we hope to be able to link those in this document. So again, it's sort of divided by energy, transportation, land use, water, waste, economic development, and job creation, equity and health. And the health also involves some resilience aspects, regional aspects, and then always engage the public. The other thing that's really, that's the next thing in our toolkit is messaging. And these are research tested ways to engage the public and to communicate with the public that we know work. We know that there are a lot of folks who have climate trauma or try to avoid action because it's just too much for them to bear. These are tips and guidance on how you can actually engage. And I know this from having run several political campaigns, that words make a huge difference. When you tell people, you know, that something is good for the country, that seems kind of distant and out there. But if you say this is good for Sacramento, or, you know, this is good for the state of California, this is good for our community right here, that makes it more relevant and local for them. And changing out phrases like we should to we can, we have that power. Saying something's good for the economy is kind of like saying it's good for education. Those are big words. They don't resonate locally. When you say we're going to attract new business, we're going to keep our good business here because of these climate preparations we're doing, that impacts people more and feels more local and more relevant. So that's just those are some of the things that we look at in that guidance for how to communicate. Next part of our toolkit, we have actually sample climate declarations. And as you can see with the two I have here, the Utah declaration is very short and simple. And it builds on those Utah values and says we can, our innovative spirit can solve this climate challenge. Mississippi River has a longer proclamation that's actually 2 pages that has a lot more in what they have done and what they're aiming to do. Again, these are visible commitments to your community that you are taking action and that you have the capability of doing that and you're going to engage them in it. So these are just samples for, again, for communities that are looking for some kind of guidance on how to make that declaration. Finally, we even put a community letter when you're preparing a website that you want to have citizens going to be engaged, to see what your city's doing, what your county's doing. This is a sample of how you might preface that page and start with, you know, our city is a great place to live, work, and raise a family. We all want to do what we can to ensure we continue to thrive. So this is just, again, a template that it could come from your city manager or your mayor or a department head that's working on stormwater, something that helps put those pieces of the toolkit together and helps people know this is why you're focusing on climate and sustainability. Finally, we include in our toolkit our cross-sector resources. And this is the first time that we've done this in communities because, you know, we have those 2 different programs engaging our health community and our faith community. But we have found that the best way for communities to move forward is to move all those sectors. And so there's actually different language that you look to your pastor or your rabbi to use, and that you look to your doctor or the head of your hospital to use. And this language connects with people in a really local and relevant way, especially in health impacts. We find that health is a major motivator for Americans to take action. And when you can have health professionals trained to talk about, you know, what is vector-borne disease and why are mosquitoes more prevalent when it's getting wetter and when the storms are getting more frequent and the temperature is rising. What does that mean for me and my family? What does it mean for my children? What does clean air do for my children versus dirty air? So all of that is going to be very helpful. And these, again, we have talking points are part of the resources we have. And they're actually counterpoints that you can look at. We send these talking points out frequently with ways to counter some of the folks who are not concerned or are expressing unwillingness to act or be part of solutions. So real quickly, a couple of great examples that we have of success. One of those is our Path to Positive Utah. And Mayor Biskupski is seen here unveiling a charging station as they have been putting more EV charging stations in their community. We really had a terrific path with them, starting with Mayor Biskupski in 2016. That was a time when Utah would not even use the word climate change, when their legislature refused to talk about it. We worked with them to engage leadership, to have visible local leadership supporting climate action. They got business folks involved. They got the ski resorts involved. They founded the Utah Climate Action Network. And in 2017, they made their own commitment to 100% clean energy. And within 2 years, they actually got the legislature to pass a law that said climate was a concern in Utah. A year later, they passed a law, and this is a legislature that's 80% Republican. They passed a law saying that any city could go to 100% renewable energy by 2030, and that the local utility would work with them to do that. So amazing progress, engaging the community, working through all sectors, being positive. We also have a program in Los Angeles, and we all know Los Angeles is very challenged. We worked with Climate Resolve, which is a local nonprofit there. We also engaged with the office of Mayor Garcetti. And with that engagement, working with our Path to Positive tools and our methodology, Los Angeles has done quite a bit. We know that, of course, there's a Green New Deal that the mayor has talked about. They also did some interesting resilience and heat mitigation around cool roofs and cool streets. And this, of course, is an area they're painting the street white to help reflect and bring down the temperature. And they also have a new ordinance for roofs to have reflective and white tops, and again, to help bring down the heat. Their leadership circle, their local visible leadership, now has more than 300. They've hosted 2 Climate Day LAs to really focus the city on it. And their citizens recently passed a $120 billion transit tax. So that has been terrific to engage Mayor Garcetti. He's there in the red tie in the front. You might recognize him. And I'm the person in the back in the bright orange. So that was terrific working with all the mayors and the cities that were focusing on climate. We have a lot of good allies there. Our last success story is in Southwest Florida. And we've seen, again, a very conservative area of Florida. The western side has not been hit by the storms the same way that Miami has until Irma hit 2 years ago. And now we did a survey in Southwest Florida and showed the local leadership that their residents are concerned as well. And they feel like their communities are not doing enough. We got great local coverage through our partner down there, which is the Conservancy of Southwest Florida. And again, these media articles help move the community forward. And we're looking forward to continuing to work with them on solutions. So we hope that you will download these resources. These are free. They are available on our website, pathtopositive.org. You see it in blue there. All these resources are free. We want you to use them. We want you to turn to them when you need to write a speech, when you need to engage your community, when you want to use a fun, positive video. We want you to sign up for our newsletter and our talking points so you can get those research-tested talking points about how to engage in a positive way that can answer even some of the folks who don't want to take action or are suspicious of what you're doing. We have a newsletter, and we have an ambassadors program that is developing that is training health professionals, faith professionals, and community professionals to go out into communities and have the talk that will engage that community, help bring in citizen participation, and make it so that more and more folks can be part of the solutions. So those ambassadors are going to be available soon as resources to communities to come and talk and engage folks and help explain why the cities and counties are doing the mitigation and the adaptation that they need to. One last moment before I open it up to questions, and we want to make sure that you know we have the American Climate Leadership Awards that will be awarded this March at our annual Climate Leadership Summit. So we have over $150,000 in awards that we will be giving out again to feature inspirational examples of climate leadership that have been successful in mobilizing public support and political will. And they can be in youth, health, faith, or communities. The 10 finalists will get to travel to our annual summit. And the link below is a way that you can apply. We hope that you will think about that. It can be an individual or an organization who has made incredible success and is inspirational. We want to make sure other communities around the country are learning from you as well. And we hope you'll consider that. So with that, I know I've talked pretty fast. We had a lot to go over there in our toolkit. And I want to now, Meghan and I are now able to answer some of the questions that we know that have come through in the chat.
Great. Thank you both. Really appreciate that. We do have several questions. So let's go ahead and get started. The first one is regarding to the survey, the ACMS survey. Why did so many numbers drop in from 2017 to 2018 after rising from 2015 to 2017?
That's a really good question, and something that we try to look at, by demographic. The nature of the metric survey is a polling instrument. And so we can look at findings by key demographics. That drop was largely driven by people who identify as very conservative and strong Republicans. So we ask the political affiliation in a number of ways. And in conjunction with they tend to be white males over 60. So it's like a very specific combination of demographics that drove that drop. Overall, we're seeing increasing numbers amongst Democrats and independents and a lot of other demographics. And so if you look at the overall numbers, it's a voting majority, a vast voting majority where the numbers are, the right numbers are rising.
Okay, great. And then we do have a couple of requests of who to contact at ecoAmerica to present in person in city chambers, or is a custom webinar available for the evening time? We want to present.
So does the question specify presenting why the public should be engaged in climate action, or presenting the health impacts, or is there a more specific part of that? Because we have folks who are experts in different aspects of our work, and depending on what that presentation would be part of, we would point you in a different direction. let me just explain our health ambassadors. So if you're, one of the great things about working cross-sector is that we pull in people who are not what we call the traditional climate activists. So if you want to get, a pediatrician to talk about the impact on children's lungs and their health and asthma rates, that sort of thing. Our health ambassador program is training. We are in process of growing those numbers. So you could actually, if you had a city council meeting and you wanted to see, is there a doctor in the Sacramento area who's been trained to talk about these, you could contact us and see. And we hope to have, of course, those advocates in every state by some point. I will give the caveat that we have just started this program. I think, Megan, we have, 25 trained now at this point?
Correct.
Yep. So we want to grow that. Hopefully in the next 6 months, we'll quadruple that and get folks out all over the country. So that would be for health impacts. And then if you are looking for someone to talk about the moral imperative and stewardship from a faith perspective, you would look for one of our faith ambassadors. And when I continue to get our community ambassador program up, we'll have folks who are more geared to look at community aspects. What are cities and counties doing? What more could they do? Why is that important for your community? So that ambassador program will be a great resource. Again, it's growing. People are free to contact me and, ask if which of those categories their concern or their interest is in, and I can certainly direct them.
Great, thank you. And we have another question that says the faith community has been cast nationally as not supporting climate change or resilience work. My experience is that locally, this is not true. Is there an effort in the faith community to change this perception nationally?
Absolutely. And in fact, I participated in an event on Tuesday that was a UN consultation with the faith community. Every major national denomination was represented except for Baptists. And so an overwhelming majority of faith leaders are not only taking a look at what they can do within their denominations to really help all of their congregants and congregations to move forward on this issue, but also as constituencies who bear witness to the problem to help put more pressure on policymakers to act. So there is a concerted effort in this area, both, I guess you would call it upstream and downstream, to do more on this issue. There are contingencies that are not acting on this issue. They tend to be the evangelical denominations, but really only a subset of those. And even within those, the young folks are on, want to do something on climate. So I think that there is a contingent that's loud in denying or inaction on this issue. But as far as the vast majority of people of faith want to do something about this, and they're just looking for ways that are relevant to their faith to act. So that momentum is not only has started, but really there were some big commitments on Tuesday to move forward at a much higher level.
I would just add, the other interesting thing is that pastors and rabbis and imams are trained to deal with crises. They're trained to be places of refuge for people in trauma. And you might think about in your communities, mobilizing your faith community to help people respond to, losing their homes or having relatives who lost their homes to flood or fire, and being able to be that, counseling refuge. But also there are churches that have offered physical refuge for folks who are fleeing climate disasters. And again, having that conversation to help some of those churches and synagogues maybe be prepared to take in some of the folks as they flee. Those are great ways to engage the faith community.
Great. And our next question is, how do you help communities move forward in a positive energy if the community recently was affected by a disaster due to climate change, for example, increasing wildfires?
That is, and we are seeing that, and we'll be seeing that more and more. And I know that Northern California, you all have really, really been through it with that, and we just, our hearts go out. That's, again, a place where you want to look at all the community resources and you want to look at those regional connections. I was telling somebody recently that in Hurricane Katrina, which of course was New Orleans, in the city of Charlotte, we received more than 4,000 people who were fleeing from that disaster because they'd lost their homes. Charlotte is, I don't know, 1,000 miles away. So people will go to where they have family. They will go to places they know are growing. They will seek refuge. And really, if you're a community that is recovering, deploying all those resources, having an emergency plan, but realizing that that emergency plan is going to turn into a recovery plan that is going to be long-term, that is going to take local, state, and federal resources. It's going to take business resources, faith resources, health resources, and trying to work ahead to make those connections, to have that network in place. We know that communities all over the country have traveled, sent their fire teams and sent their United Way teams and social workers to help and to really be that community. So I would emphasize preparation ahead, but then remember that the resources are broad, and don't be afraid to reach out regionally and across those political boundaries that don't mean much when everybody is in need.
All right, next question. A frequent concern in trying to communicate with people about climate change is a frustration of people only putting pressure on action at the individual level. How do you engage with those frustrations and communicate tools for people that want to be involved in higher than the individual level and get involved with the political side of it that might be afraid or don't have the experience?
Well, I can certainly talk about political engagement. Since I was the target of lots of those phone calls and emails for many years, political leaders love it when their constituents email them and call them with their concerns, because it gives them that storytelling that they absolutely need to make decisions and to move policy. So when you hear somebody who's dealing with a mold-infested home and doesn't have the money to repair it, and their kids are coughing, and they come down to a county commission meeting and they say, you need to step up the health coverage, and the money's available for upfits and for repair. That means a lot. So what we always encourage people to move into advocacy. Once you've engaged the public, help them understand how they can write letters, how they can join groups, how they can join movements, how they can go to Washington. Many organizations have, lobby days or citizen engagement days in Washington, D.C. You're right, Sacramento, you can go and talk to the state government. And just, people need to watch when those public sessions are open and, certainly be part of it. But even emails and phone calls.
And I will say, what Jennifer is talking about is you don't necessarily have to have all the skills of an activist. Your story is what's important, right? So to get people over that fear or that hesitancy of advocacy, really just ask them to tell their story. And that could be really just articulating their concerns. And so that's first and foremost. I would also say that people should feel empowered by their individual actions, and to know that everything they do helps, but that their voice is what's most important, and because it's required to get that change at a local, regional, national, and even the international level.
All right, and I think we have time for one more quick question. In the case of a department or program that does not always engage with the public, how can it best engage with the community to gain input and local perspectives around climate action strategies?
So a department that doesn't normally engage with the public, would that be like the accounting?
Potentially public works?
Oh, public works. Wow. Absolutely. People are interested in knowing a lot about how their cities and counties work. And, you know, when it comes to utilities or water or pipes, that sort of thing, I'm always surprised at how people really are interested. And so I would work, you know, if you're not used to doing that, work with whoever does your neighborhood engagement. You know, the folks who are out there talking about keeping stormwater drains clean and why you should do that. You know, join in that conversation and be there to answer questions and look at how all that is connected to more extreme weather and things that, you know, you have to do differently now than you had to do before. And again, how citizens can be part of that solution. So I would work with other departments who are used to engaging the public. And, you know, a lot of cities now have started going kind of neighborhood by neighborhood. And, you know, we look at everything from roads to stormwater to utilities and trees, et cetera. All those things interact. And so you might even think about getting all your departments together and having a town hall in, you know, different neighborhoods.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Megan and Jennifer, for joining us today. And thank you to everyone who was able to participate in this webinar. We hope you found it worthwhile and valuable. As a reminder, the webinar recording and PowerPoint presentation will be shared via email and also posted on CRC's website. If you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And that concludes our webinar. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.